Welcome to Energy and Personal Excellence. Welcome to the spirituality and religious exploration area. Few contemplative thoughts here regarding this common phrase about the drop becoming the ocean. In many philosophical traditions, many contemplative approaches, particularly in a tradition known as the non-dualism of Vedanta, Vedanta. Some of you are familiar with that. There is this idea that the drop, that is our soul, that is our what's called the jiva, Jiva, the bound soul, it gets unbounded and it becomes the ocean. So in the mind of a seeker who is seeking liberation, there is a demand in the mind, or there is this wanting in the mind to become the ocean. I want to become the ocean, and I want to merge into the ocean. One has to be very careful with this from my point of view, simply because there is this demand or this drive to become something, to become the vast. And that desire to become the vast, the infinite, can be confused with actual realization, meaning that that desire can go into the egotistical framework. So that desire to become the vast could actually prevent the person from moving into that vastness. Rather than the desire to become the vast, the qualitative realization of what one actually is, that the quality of the ocean is the same quality of me, which is the individualized divine spark. And if that qualitative identity is realized, then there isn't the becoming the vast, then there is the assertion that I am the vast. This notion of trying to become the infinite, the me that is trying to become the infinite, the drop that wants to become the ocean, that wanting to become the ocean may be the biggest obstacle in preventing the actual realization that could happen a very different way, because the ego can get hold of these ideas of becoming. So in philosophy and in religious contemplation, there is quite a bit of discussion about being and becoming. So in our relative world, we are always trying to become something. We want to become a doctor, we want to become a businessman, we want to become whatever it is, occupationally. We want to become a father, we want to become a mother, we want to become rich. There's always this becoming process that our mind is accustomed to in our day-to-day frame. But this same becoming process, if this is carried over into spiritual realization, that could be a very serious obstacle. I'm just reflecting in some contemplative thoughts here. See what you think about this. And I'd love to get into discussion with you about this, or to dialogue further. The becoming of the me, one has to be very cautious about one has to be very cautious about the difference between the ego that is the me and that which is the actual me. Now, some people have said that the ego is just another form of the infinite. So what difference does it make if we have the ego? Let the ego expand. The expansion of the ego is also the expansion of the consciousness into the higher consciousness. I've even heard some people say this. Well, if you want to try that, go ahead and see what happens. I don't believe that that is going to produce actual realization. It will strengthen the division with others. But many times what happens, that division is strengthened in a way that we don't realize. So some spiritualists have talked about the path of the I, that only I exist, like solipsism. Like in philosophy, there's something called solipsism, solipsism. Solipsism means I know that I exist and I'm the only one that exists, and I'm the only entity that exists. So Vedanta, non-dualistic Vedanta, is something like that also, in some extent. So the path of the I is not really a path. There's not really any path. There's just the me that is existing. And because I exist, therefore I am. As Descartes would say, I think, therefore I am. We can even take that further to say I exist. And because I exist, everything else exists. Everything that is in my perception exists only because I exist. You can look at it that way. Then what path is there to this realization? Then all we have are the two things. We have this outside world that we perceive through our senses, and then we also have our own perception process, and then we have the me that is perceiving. That could be the Atma, the Jivatma, or the soul, or consciousness. So, if that's the case, then where's the issue of God? Then there is no issue of God, if that's the case. And if you bring God into the picture, what are we talking about? Is God something that is our own reflection? Well, is that so? Or even is this outside world our own reflection? Or is the outside world not our reflection, but we are in this vastness that is appearing as the outside world through the mind-brain body complex? These are very, very tricky questions. And meditation is, in my opinion and my experience also, and hopefully it is in yours also, that it is the doorway to intrinsically realize what the answers are. What is being versus becoming? The becoming process is in the body, in the mind, and it is an ego process to become something. In fact, the ego wants to become stronger, or it wants to persist, it wants to remain. Now, what is the ego? It's just a word, right? But what are we talking about? It's the dividing factor between the me and the you. It's the divisive factor that I am different from you, I and you, I versus you. Even if I see a difference between me and you, even if there isn't a feeling of I versus you, there's still the perception of the difference. Even, for example, I'm sitting outside right now and I see all these beautiful trees, and there's some flowers and some cars and other things are here. I can see that these things are not me. I'm different from them. But is that really the case? Or are they part of me? Or do they exist because of me? Or is the me that is perceiving this, given this perception by God, different from the me? So these are all questions in ontology, the study of being in philosophy, and they are also the same questions in the contemplation of the non-dualistic Vedanta. Non-dualism means that there is not the two, there is only the one. And even the word non-dualism, it has the word dualism in there. That would mean that to even think about non-dualism, there has to be dualism somewhere. Otherwise, how you will be able to think about non-dualism? So because we live in a dualistic relative world, we use the expression, or those who are the sages in the history, they have used this expression, Advaita, non-dualism, because there is the experience of dualism. But they are trying to awaken out of the experience of dualism, which they would consider to be an illusion after the awakening. Once one is fully awakened, according to the Advaita masters, the full awakening results in a realization that all of this thing that we are perceiving, the waking state, the dream state, the different objects of the world, our mental objects, all such things are a projection or an illusion, or a certain power of the me that is God, or the Brahman. I mean, again, the word God is not used necessarily that way. They use the word Brahma or Brahman. Sometimes it's pronounced that way, but it's really Brahma. I don't know why they say Brahman, but I think in Sanskrit sometimes they put an N with like a half mark at the end. So I don't know much about that, but it's pronounced both ways apparently. So it just simply means that I am the vast. I am this limited being stops being the limited being, or we realize that this limited being is not really who I am. In reality, I am something different from all these limitations that is there. And that's the whole idea of Advaita. So then, what is the role of God? Is God just an invention of the mind in tradition? Is that what it is, as many have stated? Or is God something transcendent to even that vast consciousness, as some have, as many have stated? So at some point I'll go into all the different positions and perspectives of the various teachers and masters and gurus and whoever they are, what they have said about this, why they have said it the way they have said it, what the psychology is behind it is all very interesting. But anyway, my only point here in this brief contemplative recording to be shared with all of you is to illustrate the point that the becoming process can be an egotistical process. The ego can get hold of that. And that can happen in devotional also. Devotional paths, same thing can happen. That I'm becoming a better devotee, and becoming more humble. And we feel that, if you start doing devotional practices, you start feeling more humility. But the ego can grab hold of that feeling that, this is me. So the ego is hiding in the background, trying to reassert itself. See how nice I am, see how good I am, see how wonderful I am, and I'm better than others somewhere. Even though the mind is trying to fight against that, there's still that very subtle ego that reasserts itself. So what the ego actually is very interesting. I mean, in pure Advaita Vedanta, those who believe in the absolute monism, or who propound that that's the case, they say even the ego is just nothing more than another function of the infinite consciousness. That's all it is. So then, okay, well, if that's the case, then what do we do with the ego? Do we just keep expanding it? Ask yourself this question. Very interesting question. If the ego is actually just a part or just an aspect of the infinite consciousness, then and we experience the ego, we have the ego, what do we do with the ego? Do we just keep expanding it as the way humanity is doing right now, and causing turmoil and conflict and problems and whatnot? Or can the ego be actually given a different turn to say, I am the infinite? Now, is that an expansion of the ego, or simply the dissolving of the ego into the infinite? Or is it is not the limited ego, but it is the boundaryless me? Now, you cannot use the word ego when we say boundaryless me. Anyway, these are some thoughts, folks. We'll talk about this later. We have a very nice presentation scheduled on the 11th of this month, 11th of September, 2020, for 3 hours on Advaita Vedanta. These are some initial thoughts I have. I'll be sending some additional videos that are on YouTube for some background information, plus the Vivek Chudamani, one of the scriptures of Adi Shankaracharya ji, who was an extraordinary Advaitic master and a great devotee also. He has written this scripture, and so I have attached that to the email. And I hope to see all of you on the 11th. Please do share the link with others who are deeply interested in this. Otherwise, we want to keep it to a relatively smaller group, less than 10 people, if we can. Those who are truly and profoundly interested in this contemplation on Advaita, what it's all about, and what practical meaning it has in all of our lives. All right, thank you very much. This is Sachin Karnik.